Hello and welcome to episode 16 of AARGH My Optics, a podcast where two adults discuss, overanalyze, and generally take a kid's toy and media franchise a little too seriously, usually that of the Transformers. I am your skeptical, battle-hardened, Robocop-alike that's too old for this shit co-host, Orion Ghia. And with me is my young, overconfident, naive, and some might say, not me of course, annoying, co-host, Virtual Dave. Say hello to our listeners, Virtual Dave.
Hello.
Good to see you. So, let me take you back, dear listener, way back a whole 20 years ago to the ancient times of 2002, when the Transformers franchise lay in flux. The sequel to Beast Machines, which was to be called Transtech, had been scrapped, and instead the original Japanese exclusive toy line Car Robots, which replaced Beast Machines over there, was hastily rebranded in the West as Robots in Disguise, whilst Hasbro and Takara, for the first time ever, worked on co-creating the next era of Transformers. The result, debuting in June-July 2002, was a return to mostly vehicle alt modes and a more child-friendly, gimmick-laden aesthetic that introduced new designs, characters, and even a whole new diminutive faction of Transformers into the mix. This spawned the next stage in the brand's evolution and 5 years of what would come to be known as the Unicorn Trilogy. Today, 20 years later, we're discussing the series and toy line that kicked that all off, Transformers Armada. Now then, Dave, you are part of the Armada generation, are you not?
I am indeed, yeah.
So why don't you kick off proceedings? Where were you, how old were you, and how did Armada affect you when it launched?
Well, first of all, I was very young when Armada started. I was been going 10, going on 11. It would have been somewhere between a birthday. And I don't remember, like, when I first started watching the show, but I do remember going on holiday to, I think, Portugal, and during whatever 2 hours we had to wait for our flight, there was like a W.H. Smith or something we went into, and I got some books. I convinced my parents to buy me some Transformers books, and it was Transformers Armada. So I remember it was like some sort of initial, I guess what you would call it, character guide back then.
Right. Okay.
And
so like
going through all the...
Sorry, so like fiction, prose, not comic books, like just books.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just like a little tech specs and going through all the different characters in the show. And I thought, oh yeah, Transformers.
We've done a bit of digging, and it appears young Dave's holiday reading comprised of Transformers Armada Official Guidebook and Transformers Armada The Battle Begins, both published by Reader's Digest. The former is essentially a collection of character profiles, similar to the classic tech specs, but follow neither the comic or cartoon continuity. The latter is a loose novelisation of the first 3 episodes of the TV series.
And I think from there, it kind of kicked off into me watching the show and stuff, but I don't recall watching all of it. I think it landed on a day where I was either busy or something, so I didn't see every episode, but I did watch a lot of it, but not all of it, until years later, when I got it on DVD.
And what about the toys? Did you see them in the shops at the time?
Oh yeah. It was where I started really saving up pocket money and going to the shops and just getting it for a tenner, you know.
So you were buying them when they were out on the shelves?
Yeah.
Or your parents were?
Oh no, this was me saving money to go and get it. My parents had no interest in
Really? I was thinking with you being kind of 10 or something, you might have got a few as gifts or something.
No, I don't
No,
think so.
so it's just you saving your pocket money and going to buy it.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of did the same with G.I. Joe and Action Masters back in the day. So yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from. Well, for me, I would have been, quick bit of maths, 24 when Armada came out. So I had no interest. Or rather, like, I hadn't really paid Transformers much attention for quite a long time, but I had got back into Transformers maybe the year previous to it coming out through the Robots in Disguise line, which I mentioned a few times on the podcast, like, you know, the Robots in Disguise, Optimus Prime. That kind of pulled me back in, and I started investigating other Transformers lines and what was out. And that's when Armada hit. So I was buying RID just as that was fizzling out, and Armada started to appear on the shelves. And to be entirely honest with you, at the time, I thought compared to RID, it looked kind of childish and gimmick heavy and just not for me. Which, let's face it, it wasn't. I was a 24-year-old. So...
I mean, no, that's a fair assessment. I mean, you look at any, like, deluxe, for instance, compared to a RID one, the aesthetic is very different.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, so I sort of skipped over it for the most part and concentrated on RID and Car Robots, the Japanese equivalent. And then also Universe figures as these came out, and then reissues of G1 and vintage G1 and Beast Wars. And really, Armada it didn't really appear on my radar much. I just kind of ignored it. And I didn't really start taking an interest in what Armada spawned, which is the Unicorn Trilogy, until Energon came about, really. So Armada's one of those ones that I had a few toys of at the time. I did pick up a few, but I wasn't really into it. So yeah, what toys did you have?
At the time, I think I had Hoist. I had a bunch of the Universe toys as well, which kind of like were obviously the same molds. So sometimes they were Universe options, but it was mostly the deluxes, like Hoist, Blur, some of the Minicon teams. I don't think I had any of the leaders at the time. It was just mostly the deluxes.
Yeah. I definitely picked up the Deluxe, or I think Deluxe was called Supercon at the time. Orion is correct. For Armada, the basic, deluxe, mega, ultra, super, and supreme size classes, established during the Beast era, were supplanted by naming conventions based around the term con or minicon. Basics were replaced with sets of 3 minicons, obviously carrying the minicon size class, and the remaining classes were named Supercon, Maxcon, Gigacon, and Superbase, respectively, with only the Supreme class remaining unchanged. I got the Supercon Optimus Prime, known within the fan community as Bendy Prime, because he was surprisingly articulated for a Unicorn Trilogy toy, or for an Armada toy anyway.
Yeah, he was great.
He was alright, yeah. I mean, he had a funny gimmick where he did a little dance. But, he was alright. And I don't know if I bought this myself or someone donated it to me or what, but I do remember at one point having the big Optimus Prime.
Oh, right, yeah.
With the self-transforming trailer. And I thought it was absolute garbage.
It's quite, once you have Bendy Prime, then you have him, you're thinking, this shouldn't be right for the price point. This is, this is like a step backwards.
The self-transforming gimmick kind of ruined it, really. It was, like, the big version, the big robot version was so static. He could only really move his arms and his head, I don't think he had a waist. No, he definitely didn't have any leg articulation, because...
No.
So it was something that we're going to probably talk about a lot. The gimmicks of this line got in the way of things like articulation, things like aesthetics in some instances. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a thing that happened. What else did I have? I had I think this was after it had finished. I picked up Galvatron, or rather, the later version of Megatron, just because I thought it was a nice colour scheme. And then I got the evil version of the Air Assault team, the Star Saber team, but the set that was coloured the same to match him. I got that. I don't know why, but I did have the Space Minicon team that turns into the
Blaster.
Astro Blaster. Sorry, Requiem Blaster, I think it's called in the English version. And I had a few other Minicons. I think I had Thrust for a while.
I assume you had Unicron.
Well, yeah, we'll get on to that. But yeah, I did. I had maybe a few other things. A friend of mine gave me his Jetfire to sell once, so I did play about with it, but I didn't particularly own it. But yes, of course I had a Unicron because it was the first ever Unicron toy. Mm-hmm. So I had to get it, and it did look fairly G1 accurate to a certain point, and it was pretty good, really, all things considered. But we'll go into more detail about that later. We're going to have a whole bit about we talk about the Unicron toy, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was my experience of it was that, really. I don't think I went any further than that. I watched the Japanese versions of Energon and Cybertron, which is Super Link and Galaxy Force, respectively. But I never got round to watching Armada until very recently. I've just rewatched it all. So, although I watched Micron Densetsu, or Legends of Micron, instead of watching the American dub, which is Armada. My optics! So, you watched the show at the time, but you were saying spottily.
Yeah, because obviously this is back in the day when it came on once a week, and if you missed it, you missed it. And I think that really got me, I mentioned it before, but I used to record Energon and Cybertron, and I think it was because I missed so much of Armada. You know, I figured out how the tape recorder worked, so I could tape the episodes I was missing. Because I think isn't Energon like twice the length of Armada? It's not a very long series in terms of like.
Well, Energon is, or what do you mean?
It's twice as long, isn't it? It's like there's more episodes in Energon.
Armada has 52 episodes, so I don't know whether I call that short. There's quite a lot of it. I don't know whether there's more Energon than there is Armada, but it still seems pretty long to me.
I guess it's because there's so much of it I missed at the time, so it kind of felt like a short show in comparison.
Yeah, I'm just checking for you right now. Let me have a quick look. Energon. Here we go. Cartoon. Nope. Energon's the same length.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, they're both 51 episodes long, and I wouldn't be surprised if Galaxy Force is the same, or Cybertron. So they're both very long, but maybe you missed out on so many episodes of Armada originally that you think it's shorter. But you've watched it all now, haven't you?
I've caught up with some of the episodes I missed, because I've seen a lot of the early episodes, but later on, like when all the extra characters started popping up, it was the bits I missed.
This is something I want to talk about, because I rewatched all of it in order, and the early episodes are slow, plodding, nothing really happens. They're all essentially the same. The plot is basically they detect a minicon, they go to get the minicon, some sort of environmental issue makes it hard for the Transformers, the kids help, Decepticons turn up, they fight, sometimes there's betrayal or use of a minicon weapon, and then someone wins and the Decepticons teleport away, and then we have a little bit at the end where everyone stands around and explains the moral of the story. And that goes on for about 20 episodes. And it's not until you get to like around episode 30 that things really start kicking off. And then from that point, it's like bam, 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 bam. Like new thing introduced. Don't explain why. Just go with it. Reasons, etc. and then it's over. The pacing is terrible.
I was thinking about this when I was rewatching it, and I think the problem with that is the time it came out. So like what I'm just talking about, like how I would have missed episodes. And I noticed a lot of them watching back have like more or less recap episodes where like they just half of it is a flashback.
There's 2 recap episodes during the season. There's one around about episode 12 or something, and another around 25 or 24 or something. Well,
yeah, so like there'll be like plot points that are, I guess you could just catch back up if you had missed episodes or something. You could. I feel when you're watching it back to back, it feels a lot. It's too much. Like it's not meant to be viewed so close together.
No, you're right. It's not meant to be binge watched. No, because it wasn't designed that way.
No.
It is meant to be watched in an episodic way. But it just, to me, it feels a little bit like the overall plot of the show.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point around about episode 30 or something where they suddenly go, right, now we're basically entering the end game. Mm-hmm. And none of that is foreshadowed in the first 20 or 30. It's just like, everything's kind of just pottering along very simply. And apart from having the kind of stuff going on with Sideways and the stuff going on with the Minicon weapons, mostly it's just very kind of low key. and then and all of a sudden they're building spacecrafts, they're going to space, Unicorns turning up, and you've got a lot of plot points all intertwining that all kind of go somewhere very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for the first 10 episodes, there's only 7 Transformers in it, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's a small cast to start off with.
Yeah. Well, it's a small cast for the first 30 episodes, and then then all of a sudden we've got everybody, and then they introduce people like Overload. They introduce him. I don't know how it is in the US version, but in the Japanese version, he's called Ultra Magnus. Mm-hmm. I was just watching the episode. It's the one where they encounter Nemesis Prime or Black Convoy or whatever. And Hot Rod or Hot Shot and First Aid are on this weird planet. They've been pulled into a black hole, ended on this weird planet where Nemesis Prime is. And Optimus comes to save them all in their spaceship. And he just turns to Hoist, I think, or Grapple, or whatever Grap, or whatever he is called, Smokescreen, that guy, and goes, "Is Ultra Magnus ready?" And he goes, "Yes." And I'm like, "Who? Who is Ultra Magnus?" And then he just launches out of the ship with Ultra Magnus attached to the back of him, like in truck mode. And it's like, oh yeah, new character. Great. Where did he come from? Never explained.
I don't think he is a character. I don't think he's, like, represented as being sentient at all. He's kind of like a God Bomber or something situation. Like, he's just...
Yeah.
He's just armor.
If he's had that kind of, like, kicking around... I mean, why are we suddenly seeing this for the first time? Why have you not mentioned it? You could at least have said, like, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago that they were working on building him this new thing, or something.
It would have been nice, wouldn't it?
But it's just like, is it ready? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's ready. It's coming now. Like, what?
We haven't got time for that. We haven't got time.
They had 30 episodes time. They had 30 episodes to plant those seeds. They didn't do it at all.
Well, didn't they do that with Jetfire as well? Because, like, their combination just comes out of nowhere, and then they're like, oh yeah, we could always do this.
Jetfire just turns up, and they go, oh, it's my second in command, Jetfire. No one has ever heard of him. And then, they just combine.
Why not? It's a cool scene.
But a lot of that happens. There's a lot of things that are just introduced with absolutely no real explanation. It's just like, oh, this guy's here now. Okay,
yep.
Why? We don't know.
It's interesting how you can draw parallels from, like, G1 and how characters just pop up without any introduction or any backstory. And even the mistakes, there are so many. I can't believe I never noticed it before.
Yeah. There's actually less in the Japanese version.
Oh, so they cleaned it up, or they just had people knowing what they were doing?
Well, this is the interesting thing, actually. So, even though the TV show was made in Japan, in Japanese,
right.
Hasbro rushed out Armada. It was the first to air. It came out 6 months before Legends of Micron.
Oh.
Because Hasbro wanted Armada to be out on time for the launch of the toys. And basically, it wasn't ready.
Mm.
So they just took what the Japanese production company had ready, and they just did a very quick and lazy dub, and just whacked it out. In Japan, they had another 6 months to iron out all the problems, because the toy line didn't actually get going until around 2003 in Japan.
Right. So they had the time.
Yeah, they had the time. And also, America had a gap in the middle, like a hiatus in the middle, over like the summer holidays or something, when it wasn't on TV at all, which gave Japan and all the other countries like Canada and the UK time to catch up. And by the time the US put out the final episodes of Armada, it had already been on in the UK. We actually beat them.
Right.
Armada finished first in the UK. Yeah, it finished in Japan, Canada, and the UK pretty much just before or just around the same time as it did in the US. But I think we definitely got the final 9 episodes debuted in the UK.
Okay, that's strange.
But basically, it was something to do with Cartoon Network demanding a certain number of finished episodes before they'd sign off on the show.
Okay.
And also, and like I said, they wanted them to air in time for the toys release. Or at least that's one of the rumors. And another rumor's got something to do with Dreamwave Comics, who were making the comic for Armada, and they did make the comic for Armada. They've been asked, I think. Well, this is another rumor. I don't know whether it's true. I just read it off the internet, but apparently they were asked to provide character models for the animation, and as most Transformers fans know, Dreamwave were notoriously crap at getting things done on time. So it's possible that didn't materialise in time, which is why you've got some issues with kind of things looking off-model in the early episodes.
Right.
It's an age-old problem, isn't it? We're talking about it with bloody War for Cybertron. It's like Hasbro does not seem to be able to get its shit together when it comes to getting a show out on time for a toy line. They either rush it and muck it up, or they have a big gap. Like they don't seem to be getting any kind of synergy going, do they?
It's like Botbots. I mean, that's been 3 years apart.
Yep. I think with Botbots, I don't think there was even a plan for a show when they put the toy line out, though. So I think it's just something that they then sold to whoever it is, Cartoon Network, Netflix. It's Netflix, isn't it?
It's Netflix, yeah.
Yeah. So they must have just then sold that concept to Netflix. Go, oh, look, we've got this line of kid-friendly toys that, yeah, okay, they were on shelves a few years ago, but we can bring more out, you know? I don't think it was ever planned for that to be a TV show.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I don't know. It's just my guess.
You're right, though. It's very, there's a lot of off-model stuff going on in that show. It's so bad because when it's animated really good, like all the very over-the-top transformation scenes or combinations and whatnot, it looks great. I think it's like, for its time, you know, it was like a really well animated robots, not even just Transformers, they just look cool. But when it's not, it looks so bad when they're just, I don't know, what those transformation sequence 30 seconds out of the episode, so that maybe that's the best bit, and then the rest of the episode is just Demolisher's got like the massivest shoulders, Megatron's head proportions is always changing.
Yeah.
Didn't Dreamwave do the designs for like the stickers and the toys, but something happens and they couldn't keep up with that. Like the later issues of the toys were done by
stickers.
Yeah, the character card / stickers they had with the toys.
Oh, what? Oh, the collector card things.
Dreamwave was also responsible for that as well, weren't they?
Yeah, there was a lot of Dreamwave art appearing on boxes at the time. But, I mean, I don't agree that for the time the animation was particularly good.
Really?
I think it ranged from kind of competent to pretty bad.
Even when...
There's some standout parts here and there.
Okay.
But mostly it's a bit naff looking.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I just like those designs, so...
Well, no, but there were better shows on there was better shows on TV at the time. There was the relaunch of He-Man. There was the relaunch of Turtles.
Oh yeah,
there was, and if you're going to talk about giant robots, there was things like Gundam Wing. I mean, those were vastly superior in animation. So for the time, it was quite poor.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it was, you know, the best thing since sliced bread or anything. It's just it was a good animated, hand-drawn animated show at the time that I liked, especially for the terms of robots over here. Like, it wasn't because, I mean, off the top of my head, a lot of the stuff that we had here wasn't animated that way, like robot shows. Yeah, we had He-Man and Turtles and other stuff. But I mean, like, we had stuff that was like on Cartoon Network, like, I can't remember what it was called. A giant robot with like a car for a head. Like we had stuff, but it wasn't animated like that.
Okay, fine. But yeah, well, regardless of what you thought of it, it was riddled with animation errors and stuff due to the rush job. But they were fixed in the Japanese version. I don't know whether you watched that episode.
Yeah, the one
that I sent you
about Jetfire. Yeah.
Did you notice how much better the combined version of Prime and Jetfire looked?
Well, yeah. Because that's a good example of what I was talking about. Like, they do the transformation sequence and it looks great, all nice, lovely, and like the next shot, he's just already just like, what happened to all the proportions?
But not in the Japanese.
Yeah, they changed it.
But not in the Japanese.
Yeah, they changed it. It was like it makes such a difference. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there was still plenty of sloppy animation in the Japanese version, but the Japanese version is definitely the better of the two versions.
Oh, yeah.
But sadly, the US dub was the one that everyone else got. Like, even if you were in France, you got the US dub dubbed into French or with French subtitles. Like, that was the one that was pushed out. It was only really the Japanese that got the Japanese version, and maybe some nearby countries. But yeah, I mean, it's only a mild difference. The Japanese version is mildly better animated.
Well, I also have to say, at the time, I wouldn't have noticed or cared in the same way.
Some bad stuff with the dialogue as well, isn't there? Where people refer to each other by the wrong name.
Oh, constantly. Yeah. Characters are being called the wrong name all the time. Or the wrong voices speaking at some points.
Yeah, I don't think it happens as much as the in the Japanese version. But then one thing that I noticed about the Japanese version, and maybe it's just my ears and Japanese voices, but so many of the voices sound almost identical that it's sometimes hard to tell who's talking.
Yeah. That's definitely it's always a problem.
Yeah.
One of the other things I noticed is that in Japanese, they were a lot of times you could see the characters talking when a character was facing on, but a lot of times I noticed rewatching the American dub is that people are talking when you can't see them. So I guess they were filling out the space of a script or something, or giving characters extra lines here and there. The kids shouting from the offside.
Well, I mean, I think you said you wanted to talk about the kids. What are your thoughts on them?
I hated them. I mean, I don't like them at all.
There's I think it's like 5 kids in total, isn't there? Yeah. There's the main 3: Rad, Alexa, and Carlos.
Yeah.
Billy and the other
Fred.
one. Yeah, those 2. I don't even know why they're even there.
I don't know either. It's very...
I mean, I didn't find them hugely irritating, but they seemed largely pointless.
They didn't help a lot. Like, they when they did help, it was by accident or...
Yeah.
circumstance of the episodes.
They kind of tried to explain that the Minicons needed their help somehow later on.
Yeah, because they could kind of talk to them, but no one else could, which always didn't make much.
Yeah, so it's a bit of timey-wimey business, wasn't there, where they kind of went into the past and stopped them all becoming the minions of Unicron somehow.
Yeah, they went back in time to make sure they got away from the whole fight, and that's why they have that connection with their first 3 Minicons, or why they respond to them.
At least that gives the kids a reason to be involved, but to be honest, though, most of the time, other than that, for most of the show, the kids stay in the base with Red Alert babysitting them, and then they watch the episode with us through a view screen.
I know, even as a child, I didn't like the kids because I always used to find it really silly that they got these outfits that didn't really help them when they went to these different places. At least when Energon rolled around, Kicker got like an actual battle suit, so you could actually...
Wow, it was a dirt bike suit, wasn't it, really?
Prime gave him a proper armoured suit. I was like, okay.
Yeah, he had some kind of armour.
And then for Cybertron, the kids could hear the signal of the Omega Lock or something. So they were kind of useful. Like there was.
Well, like we said, the reason for them was the connection with the Minicons.
Yeah.
They understood the Minicons, the Transformers did not. But yeah, what I found really odd, and they did try to broach the subject, but it took them, again, about 30 episodes to get round to it, was that they didn't appear to have families. They didn't seem to have any kind of life outside of being in the Autobot base. I've noticed down, we see Rad's parents for the first time in episode 41.
Wow.
Previous to that, we had no bloody idea. All we knew was that their parents all worked at that research station. And they went to school near the research station. But they are only ever in school in like the first couple of episodes. Then you never saw them in school again, pretty much. Yep. They was always in their little orange jumpsuits, wandering around the Autobot base, doing stuff either with the Minicons or with the larger
So they
robots.
went to space and they got those ones that
spacesuits.
Spacesuits that remind me of
Power Rangers.
Well, I guess that's also the same. I was going to say Voltron, but yeah, because they all had their different coloured helmets.
But it does get going, I think, after that. And it does definitely get more interesting when you introduce more characters like Double Face, Sideways, and Rampage, Wheeljack, and Thrust, I guess. It starts to get more interesting. I didn't find Jetfire very interesting. To be honest, what happens with a lot of Transformers shows is that the Autobots are boring and no one cares if they win. And in fact, the least interesting thing would be if the Autobots won. All the scenes with the Autobots are very dull. I mean, it's 52 episodes, so I didn't watch every episode all the way through, but I'd scrub through and I'd skip most of the Autobot dialogue because they weren't talking about anything interesting.
They were all turning out to be friends, and if they didn't get along, they'd be fighting or I know. They're not very complex characters, are they? They're not. I mean, as they're voiced by the Beast Wars cast, well, not all of the cast, but it's very strange hearing them like that.
Yeah, the reason that it's not as good is that it wasn't done in the same way. It wasn't done with them all in the same room, recording it together, ad-libbing, doing all that kind of stuff. It was just, here's your script, David Kay. Please read these lines into the mic. That's essentially it. There was, as far as I know, there wasn't any they didn't really have any input into it, as they did more so in Beast Wars.
Well, he definitely squeezed in a yes in there at some point.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a bit of characterization there. Yeah, obviously they put their own little spin on it here and there, but generally it was kind of like, because there were some really clunky lines here and there that I think if either David Kay or Gary Chalk had a little bit more creative control, they might have ironed out. But I don't know. I can't say for sure. So, I mean, what did you think of the character of Optimus Prime in Armada?
I mean, he was alright. I mean, he's, considering he was like one of the first proper Optimus Primes I watched on TV. I don't know, he seemed to fit the bill as Optimus Prime. I like Gary Chalk's Optimus Prime throughout the Unicorn Trilogy, but I would definitely say Armada is the weaker of the Prime, because you don't really get to find out much about Prime in this show. Like, he just pops up, and he will fight Megatron, and, chuckle in the background while they win or they lose.
Yeah. They try to give him a character arc, but I think it falls flat a little bit. Like, they have him kind of like, he's the Supreme Commander, and there's this kind of alluding to the fact that he knows his shit and he knows what he's doing. But like, he makes so many poor decisions that I don't know why they all think that, but then that's a problem we have with War for Cybertron. But also, he has the bit where he kind of sacrifices himself to prevent Megatron from blowing the Earth up with the whatever it's called, a mega cannon or whatever, the Hydra cannon. Yeah, the combination of the shield, gun, and the Star Saber, the three Minicon weapons. just for those who haven't watched it, Minicons, we should probably talk about Minicons actually, but we'll do it in a second. But yeah, when he sacrifices himself to prevent Megatron from blowing the Earth up, everyone's very sad for 2 episodes and he's back.
I mean, it was a very sad 2 episodes. I was sad. You know,
I found it completely unsad. Because it was like, well, for a start, I was aware that he'd be back anyway. But yeah, he came back very quickly and for almost no reason.
To get that new toy, he got a different paint scheme.
No, he had the same paint scheme.
Oh, sorry, he gets that later. Yeah.
But yeah, so he had that. So he basically sacrificed himself to protect the Earth. Okay, fine. And then later on, when he has got the new colour scheme, basically Unicron's trying to suggest that him and Megatron are basically the same, and it's only because he's got the Matrix that he thinks he's better. Which is probably actually kind of true.
I mean it kind of is, yeah.
Yeah. But Megatron's a proper bastard, though. So.
Well, I mean, I guess from Unicorn's perspective, like, I mean, I don't know how it is in the Japanese dub, but he was gaining power from them fighting, right? On the conflict that the two of them had. So,
yeah,
no matter who was in the right or the wrong, he was benefiting from their battle anyway.
So they had to work together.
Yeah.
And then once Unicron was gone, they stopped working together. I think we've been callous in not talking about the thing that the whole bloody show is about, which is Minicons. So essentially, Minicons are little tiny robots who talk in bleeps and basically R2-D2 noises. Mm-hmm. And they are basically power-ups to the bigger robots. And the show, at least for the first 30 or so episodes, follows the kind of gotta catch 'em all Pokemon model of let's go hunt down a Minicon. And then you have to awaken it. It's inside a little Minicon panel. It has to be awoken. And then when it's awoken, it somehow imprints on the person who awakes it and becomes their slave, weirdly. And then later
just like
on,
Pokemon.
yeah, later on they start kind of developing their own personalities. But for a while, it's very much like, oh, well, I found you, so you have to do what I say. And they go, okay, that's what I'll do.
Yeah. I mean, the only ones that don't follow that trait is, I guess, the teams.
Well, they all don't follow that trait at some point, because there's parts where the Minicons kind of rebel. All of the Minicons, well, most of the Minicons are teams. I suppose you've got the individual ones that come with individual robots, Transformers, but they do all rebel a bit here and there, but it takes a while for them to do it.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it's, I liked the idea of the Minicons, and I still kind of do. I like the idea of another sub-faction of Transformers with their own little logo, which is pretty cool. I mean, I didn't really, probably as a child, I didn't really grasp the whole gotta catch 'em all thing, because every bot came with a Minicon anyway. I know they had the separate packs, you could buy the 3 teams or whatever, but it was a cool thing about the line that they all came with one.
Yeah, they all came with one, yeah. But, I mean, you're probably not aware of this, but we'll get into it in a bit when we talk about the toys. But there were a lot more Minicons in Japan than there were in the UK.
Yes.
But yeah, I know what you mean, yes. The concept is obviously based around the toys, which is we're going to have these little, essentially MicroMasters that power up your robot, your toy, and you'll be able to activate some kind of play feature or whatever. But in the show, that comes through as like little kind of weird slaves that power them up. And also, what's kind of comical about it is that they all turn into vehicles, but they turn into tiny vehicles. Like, it works for the 3 main ones that turn into Perceptor.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys. It works for them because their alt modes are kind of small vehicles that the kids can ride on, like a skateboard and a moped and a bike. But then when you see like the racing cars and the jets, and they're all tiny, little tiny things. In fact, at one point, one of the silly kids, the bullies or whatever they are, although they're kind of shit bullies, they kind of join they kind of join the goodies quite quickly and they become nice guys, really. One of them rides around on one of them at one point, and he's like sat on top of a racing car.
Yes.
And all this kind of is a bit confusing because the Transformers in the show have almost zero interaction with the real world, and somehow manage to keep themselves a secret despite having massive battles all over the fucking place. And flying into space, massive explosions in space. No one sees this. No one notices for a long, long time. The Transformers have no interaction with the larger world. The larger world seems to can be completely unaware of their presence for most of the series. Their alt modes mean nothing. They are completely unimportant because they don't use them to do anything. They don't use them as disguise. They just turn into them from time to time so they can shoot at each other. Or they can drive fast or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So the fact that they transform is moot. Doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have a purpose. No one even seems to question it. Like the kids don't even go, "Why do you transform into a truck?" They just do. He just does turn into a truck.
It was just cool to them. You know, whatever they were doing, it was, wow, so cool. I could do that, man. There was an episode where there was like a news reporter. She didn't know they were robots, but she was filming them intensely so they couldn't transform. I think that's the only time it comes up.
Was there? Is there? I don't remember that.
Yeah, so one when they were going on vacation somewhere and like it just.
There was like I think I skipped that one because I thought it looked silly.
It was silly. It was very silly.
Did they go? They went fishing.
They went fishing and there was some sort of mudslide and they got trapped and then they couldn't transform in front of the camera.
I scrubbed through that one quite quickly, so I may have missed that bit.
So they kind of addressed it, but it just never. Yeah, it doesn't really surface again.
It wasn't really a big part of it, was it? Because they could all go wherever they wanted to. I mean, early on, I guess they kind of made a big deal out of, different environmental conditions they go to different parts of the planet, always uninhabited for some reason. And they would, then they would kind of struggle with the environmental issues because this planet's alien to us. And then the kids would go, "Ice is slippy." And then, explain it to them and then we'd move on from there.
Yeah. I did appreciate in the first few episodes where, the initial 7 Transformers arrive. They arrive in, I guess you would call them Cybertronian modes or Cybertronian designs. They have like the same aesthetic as their toys or whatever, but it's like a Cybertronian design. You can't tell what they transform into. I appreciate it because when they did have certain flashback episodes, they would have that first episode design.
Did you know that the design of Red Alert was based on RoboCop?
I mean, it's pretty. It's not take much convincing yet.
No, something to do with RoboCop and something else. I think it was Power Rangers.
Power Rangers?
Yeah.
Oh, well, like Lord Zed or something?
No, just Power Rangers. His head looks like a Power Ranger head, doesn't it, really?
Oh, I guess so. Yes. With a visor. And yeah.
Yeah, Power Rangers and RoboCop, apparently. That was apparently Aaron Archer.
He's a big fan.
Told us this at some point.
My optics!
What did you think about Starscream?
Oh, yeah, Starscream. I quite liked the plot of having the fact that the Transformers had to work together to defeat Unicorn eventually. And that was something that the Starscream plot was quite a good one to kind of bring that through. So I quite like that. One thing I did like about the show is that despite like early on it was seeming very formulaic and kind of like not really going anywhere for quite some time, it was eventually revealed that Sideways was working for Unicron and so was Thrust. And yeah, you had Starscream basically kind of fall out with Megatron, which is normal, but for him to kind of switch sides and then kind of become a kind of more softer, more sympathetic character, I thought that was quite well done, really. I mean, it wasn't, Dinobot, but it was still kind of, it gave him an extra layer of a kind of characterization that was missing from quite a few other characters.
Oh yeah, I think it's it reminds me a lot of Six Shot from Headmasters, but this is done a lot better. I think it's a nice transition, especially having him kind of have an attachment to Alexis and that time he spent with the Autobots and finding out how they treated each other. He was used to them always bickering and fighting with the Decepticons. It blew his mind that they were getting along with their day and not punching each other or something, you know.
Which was also what Thrust identified. He was saying the reason that you keep losing Megatron is because the Autobots work together as a team and we don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I quite like Starscream's arc. It was good. And like I say, I did quite like some of the kind of, the more kind of, I didn't understand the character of Scavenger at all, but I did quite like the way that Doubleface is kind of pulling the strings.
I didn't see that as a child, so rewatching that, I always knew Scavenger was a Decepticon for a bit, and he became a good guy, but I never saw that transition. I must have missed that episode when he swapped sides. Mm-hmm. So when I'm rewatching it now, it's like, oh, he was someone's double agent. He was Prime told him to do it. Okay.
Yeah. Prime told him to do it, but many episodes later, after Prime dies,
okay,
he tells Hotshot that he switched to the Autobots because he saw something in Hotshot that he thought was like the sign of the future.
I mean,
And I was like, but hang on, I thought you were Convoy's double. Make up your mind.
I don't know what the dub says about that. Maybe it's different.
No, but I'm saying I watched all the Japanese, and I definitely got the impression that he was Convoy. It was a double agent all along, and Convoy knew about it all along. Clearly, Orion was not paying attention. The Japanese version is actually clearer about Devastator's, aka Scavenger's, defection. While in Armada, Prime identifies him as an undercover spy, in Legends of Micron, Convoy clearly states that Devastator is certainly not an undercover spy.
What did you think of that? Of like Hotshot becoming the leader for that bit? I mean, because Jetfire was second in command. Why did he just?
It didn't make an awful lot of sense because Hotshot's been nothing but a pain in the arse the entire thing.
I mean,
and then he's suddenly like, "Oh, well, you've got to be the new leader," and it's like, why? You. I suppose actually, in a way, no. I stand corrected. He makes terrible decisions. So does Optimus Prime. So why not put him in charge?
I mean,
let's take some kids into a battle zone. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that was always a terrible idea. I don't know why they kept doing that. But it's...
Well, eventually they started leaving them at home with their babysitter Red Alert.
I did appreciate that Hotshot used to actually do something. Because there was times, and it was especially in the early episodes, where there's like some sort of standoff, and no one's doing anything. They're all just standing there looking at each other. And Hotshot was like, sod this, I'm going to go punch Megatron in the face, or kick him or something.
Yeah.
Like, just do something.
Yeah, but they were quite violent, weren't they? Like all of them.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I remember sending you a screenshot, but when I first started watching it, like episode 2 or something, Optimus Prime's picking up Decepticons by the head and throwing them around. They were quite rough. They're very, very violent towards each other.
I mean, it's a nice, like the ending, like the last fight between Optimus and Galvatron / Megatron is probably my favourite fight between the leaders ever. Really, it's not. It's not. It's nothing compared to obviously like the big final fight of Megatron and Optimus Prime in like the movie or anything. But I mean, just
well, there you go.
It's just the violence I really like. You never really get to see them like rip each other apart and go through walls and...
Well, you haven't read any of the comics, have you?
Well, no. I'm sure.
Okay, yes, animated wise, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I should be more specific. Of the 3 Unicorn Trilogy shows, out of their 3 last fights, that one's my favourite.
I can't remember, so maybe we'll revisit this when we've done an episode on Energon and Cybertron. I mean, I really liked Superlink, but I can't remember. If I was asked which my favourite show of the 3 is, even now I've actually watched all of Legends of Micron, I still think Superlink is the best one of the 3. But maybe revisit it later. But I can't remember about what the final fight between the 2... I don't know why there's always got to be a final fight between Optimus and Megatron, but it seems that there has to be for some reason.
Yeah.
Because, that was the thing in this show. It's like, oh, we defeated Unicron, but we'll have to have one more episode where you 2 of you fight. Just because that's what's meant to happen.
They have to.
Not that you haven't fought each other countless times previously in the season. We'll have to have another one where you fight. But yeah, it was well animated, that fight. It was one of the better animated bits of the show.
Oh yeah.
I did notice the animation really ticked up in the last 10 or so episodes. It seemed like they'd had a bit more time to get it properly done. So there was less kind of bad animation.
I did like that thing you sent me about Fort Max being in it. I didn't realise that in so many of those flashback scenes or little... when they got to this bits in space, you got little cameos of either toys or just random G1 characters were just popping up in the background.
There's loads of it. I can only imagine that the animators were like, right, we need to do some scenes on Cybertron. We're not going to design a bunch of new Transformers. We'll just use some old G1 ones and just chuck them in there. Maybe just paint them different colours. And I think that probably made more sense in Japan, because in Japan, they don't really treat Armada as being a separate continuity.
What, from G1?
Japan pretty much treats all Transformers as being part of the same continuity. I know it doesn't make sense, but they do. Wrong again, Orion. It is true that until Legends of Micron, all Transformers fiction was treated as one, highly confusing and contradictory continuity, which also weaves in later lines like Binaltech, Kiss Players and Robot Masters. Legends of Micron, however, was Japan's first proper reboot, separate to that original sprawling continuity. To confuse things further, Galaxy Force, known as Cybertron, and the third part of the Unicorn Trilogy in the West, was originally treated as a third reboot and separate to the rest of the Unicorn Trilogy. Much later, well after the show aired, some extensive retconning by Takara found a way to reconnect Galaxy Force to its Unicorn Trilogy brethren. However, this has done nothing to make Japanese continuity any less confusing and contradictory. I suppose this went, well, we'll just put some old Transformers in who would have been on Cybertron. You know, paint them different colours, you know, but they look like Transformers. I mean, they are G1 designs, like Wheelie's in there and Fort Max is in there and like, I mean, I'm sure there's a list somewhere online, but there's a fair few G1 character models used. And even, and we'll get onto it in a bit, but Armada Rhinox appears in it for like a second.
Yeah, he's in like one of the spaceships or something, yeah.
Yeah, so they do kind of pull from various areas, don't they? And that's fine. I mean, yeah, why not?
Bit of world building, I like it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, otherwise they just look very generic. And there are some bits where they have a lot of minicons on screen and they all look exactly the same. Or like there's maybe 3 or 4 character models repeated over and over and over again. Which again, you know what that's like. It's animation constraints, money constraints, they can't spend that much time designing everybody to look different, so you can kind of forgive it.
And what do you think of, like, the in-story repaints of the characters?
Well, they were very tacked on.
I mean, like, in terms of their dramatic colour scheme changes, well, I mean, Hotshots just inverted, but everyone else is kind of very different.
I think describing them as in-story, you're being incredibly generous.
Well,
because essentially, they just change colour for no reason.
I mean, some of them decide to change their names as well, but then that doesn't really stick.
They don't in the Japanese version. They keep their names.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah, they all keep their names.
Starscream decides to call himself Thundercracker for a little bit, and then it just goes back to being Starscream.
Yeah, because why would you just change your name for no reason? It's kind of weird. Okay, Grapple and Hoist. Mm-hmm. That makes not the name change, but the change of body. That was in story. I'll give you that. He got destroyed, and then he got his body rebuilt. Fine, but then Megatron, Starscream, Hotshot, and Red Alert they just get changed colour because Minicons. Mm-hmm. And that's it. It's like, oh, the Minicons have turned up and they've just suddenly displayed a brand new power. And they do that every 5 minutes anyway. So, here's their new power. They can change your colour scheme.
I mean,
We don't know why.
They did, I guess they tried to explain it away with their connection with Unicorn, that they can just do all this stuff, but it was very vague. It was very...
They can essentially do anything. They're a MacGuffin. They can just do whatever they want. It's like, we need something to happen. Okay, the Minicons will do it. I don't even know. To be honest, I think I skipped the bit where Prime changed colour.
Okay.
I'm not sure why he changed colour. You would have thought he would do it when he came back to life, but he didn't.
No, I can't remember why he changed either.
No, I imagine it's nothing exceptionally interesting. Guess what? Yup, Minicons did it again. Via some sort of vision quest, the kids free the Minicons from Unicron's control, and they move against Unicron. This releases the Minicon weapons team and Prime, and for no discernible reason Prime changes colour. As far as we can tell, it provides no benefit other than Prime looking more badass.
Not that I don't not like his redesign.
It's not. Well, you mean his redeco rather than redesign.
His redeco.
Yeah.
I think it fits the slightly darker episodes towards the end.
My optics!
You wanted to mention favourite episodes or favourite things we liked about from the show or something?
Well, can do. I mean, I don't have any. Do you have any favourite episodes?
I really do like the episode where we were talking about earlier, when Prime and Jetfire combine. I just like that combination sequence and how it all plays out. But I think the one that I remember the most from my childhood, I don't know if I would say it's good or bad, is when Megatron breaks into the Autobots base and he basically shoots Smokescreen point blank range several times.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was quite dramatic. That was quite...
Yeah. No, there are some bits like that. Though,
I don't know if it lands in good or bad, but it was very like, wow, this is quite brutal. This was quite dark.
I think if I were going to choose any standout episodes, I would say apart from maybe like the finale, which is fairly well done, as in well done animation, and it's a little bit more interesting as far as characters go than a lot of the rest of the show. But I would say the first time that sort of thing happens, I think the first point at which I kind of sat up and thought, actually, this episode isn't bad, it was a two-parter. It was the first two-parter in the whole thing, and it was the one where the character of Wheeljack is introduced.
Yes, that's a good episode, yeah.
I think it was called The Past Part 1 and The Past Part 2 or something like that. I quite like how that was done, and it actually gave both Hot Rod and Wheeljack a bit of an interesting kind of character arc, which did kind of get some kind of payoff later when they teamed up again. So yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, I got to say, I really do like how they had the Autobot sign with the slash through it, like it was, and he just kept it from the battle they had. I liked it as a...
Yeah, but then he had a little Decepticon sign underneath it as well.
I just thought that was cool.
Which I thought was like... Yeah, I thought maybe it would have been better if he put it over the top or something. I don't know, anyway. And as for favourite characters, I suppose I've got to say Starscream was good. Who else did I like? It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, Megatron's okay, but he was kind of one note, wasn't he, a lot of the time?
Yeah. I mean, he did do a lot more craftier things than I remember him doing. Like, I remember him being much more Saturday morning villain, but he did do things that was very underhanded, and like he got the Star Saber from Starscream by cheating it out of him or pretending that he got hurt or something, and then he did little things behind the scenes, but he didn't do it enough.
There was a lot of them doing that, though, not just him. Like, Sideways was doing it, Thrust was doing it. They all had their little agendas. The only thing that kind of let that down was their agendas regularly didn't make any sense. And then you'd be like, what? And then they go, ha ha ha, that's what I was planning all along. And you go, but then why did you do it that way? That's the stupidest way. And that's what I mean. I thought the Decepticon characters were the more interesting characters because they had a bit more going on. Whereas, the Autobots suffer from that kind of like, oh, we're all pals and we all want to learn how to get along and learn an important moral lesson at the end of every episode. And then Vad will do a voiceover where he explains it, or Alexa will, or something, Whereas the Decepticons were a bunch of arseholes.
Yeah, they were. I remember they were bullying Starscream because he was the last one to get a minicon, and they were just making jokes in fun of him. Like, oh,
yeah,
you're worthless.
And Cyclonus and Demolisher just being typical idiot kind of Bebop and Rocksteady kind of characters, really thick and just lackeys that just do whatever Megatron tells them to. They didn't have any kind of character development whatsoever.
No.
They're just kind of there. I mean, what did they do? They didn't do anything.
There's moments of it, but it doesn't go anywhere. There's sometimes where they think what Megatron's doing is not right, but then they're just like, well, just to see what happens,
Yeah, exactly. They just kind of go along with things in the end, don't they? They might occasionally say, well, he's being a bit mean, but I guess that's just what he does. Okay, we'll still do whatever he says. Like I say, I don't hate the show. I wouldn't watch it again. It's a lot of episodes. I do like there to be more episodes than, say, 6 or whatever. But 52, when nothing much happens for the first 30, is not the best.
Yeah.
If they'd spread the story out a bit more, if they paced it better, it could have been a better show, I think.
I mean, like you said, we'll talk about when we get to them, but it's kind of a thing that kind of happens with the other two shows as well, so it's not...
They don't learn their lesson.
Not really. I think the show at the beginning is very much like... It revolves around what I was talking about earlier about you could miss this and you find it very easy to latch back on. But as it gets towards the end... You need to know what's going on, type of thing. And I mean, I don't know if that was part of the process about how they were trying to attach people to the audience of it and just hope that they would...
Yeah.
Maybe if they missed the first 20 to 30 episodes, they would still be able to know what's going on towards the end or anything like that, because it's...
Well, there's absolutely no need to watch the first 11 episodes because episode 12 recaps them.
Yeah.
So... It almost feels like, why don't you just start on episode 12? Because nothing much happens in the first 11 episodes. Maybe you could have episode 1, and then maybe you could have a couple of episodes where they do a bit of minicon hunting, and then they can get into it turns out 3 minicons can form a weapon. And then let's not take forever to get to the Requiem Blaster, and then... the combination of the 3 weapons, which doesn't even have a combined mode. It's just a thing.
It's just something Thrust came up with one day. And I think there's something to it, because I noticed that Prime uses his super mode a lot at the beginning, and then he just stops for quite a while. He doesn't use it again until much later.
Well, once Jetfire turns up, he doesn't need to.
Well,
he just combines with Jetfire.
Yeah, and that's not that far along.
Yeah, we've done that now because, now we need to sell you Jetfire, so buy Jetfire. It is very much like that. We're now on wave 3 or wave 4 of Armada, and we're not really selling as many primes as we used to, but we now need you to go out and buy Jetfire to combine with the prime you already bought. I think there's a bit of that going on.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
My optics!
Hello, Orion Ghia here. This particular episode of AARGH My Optics is well long, so we've cut it into more digestible chunks. You can find the next part straight after this in our uploads, or, if I've worked out how to do it, you can see a link on the screen right now. Thanks for listening.